Hey there fellow creators, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and this week we are talking about color. Stick around. So when it comes to understanding color and mixing color, there is nothing more basic than the color wheel. It's a pretty simple exercise. I love doing them every few years just to kind of retrain my brain a little bit and learn a bit more about the colors that I have. Now, if you've seen some of my videos before, you know that quite often I praise and point out the color maps that I adorn my studio with. This is a great way to just cross-reference every mix you could possibly make with every tube of paint you have. But color maps do have some limitations in that they kind of show the colors. It can be really overwhelming. So in that sense, picking more of a distinct, limited set of 3 different primaries is a great way to explore the range of color mixing as well. There is something really unique about making your own color wheel as well, in that, I mean, you can look one up online, you can just buy a printed out one, but when you do it yourself, you really start to learn things a little bit differently about how color works and operates and how you can use it in your own work. So for this week, I wanted to do something a little bit more alternative than just a basic color wheel. If you should pick your red, your yellow, and your blue, and you mix everything. But look, what happens when you skew those colors a little bit? Like not pure primary red, not pure primary blue. What if you just pick a different primary and mix those and see what kind of ranges you get? And that's exactly what I did for this week's video. I did a palette with a more high chroma set, something a little bit more what I might call the printer colors. I chose a set with a few more transparent ones, and I chose one with another few different transparent ones, but again, skewing in that different direction. Between all 3 of these, there is sort of a through line where one of the colors from palette 1 I used in 2, and one of the colors from 2 I used in 3. So you get to see this real shift in differences between all of them. So this somewhat relates back to a video from a couple weeks ago where I talked about how I choose different colors of paint. And this is very much when it comes down to choosing colors that feel compatible with each other, and maybe sometimes choosing colors that don't feel compatible with each other for a wider range of mixes. Choosing colors based on different color biases can really change how that color wheel will end up looking. Maybe you're going to get a stronger purple in one, but a more dull purple in another, based on, like different warms and cools, and where those colors lean. And while you might not get perfectly pure secondary colors, you tend to get really complex and interesting color mixes outside of that. So if you're willing to explore past the pure primaries, you might be surprised a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at our first color wheel. For this one, I used quinacridone magenta, cadmium yellow medium, and cobalt turquoise. I really wanted to pick 3 colors that felt a lot like ones you'd get out of your home printer that have a pretty wide range of mixing. For each of these color wheels, I also did tints. The outer circle of tints is mixed with titanium buff, and the inner circle of tints is mixed with titanium white, to see that difference in how even just choosing a different white can make a pretty big difference when tinting the colors as well. I think the titanium buff mixed with the yellow in this particular color wheel was definitely the most unique. It sort of dulled the color out a little bit, and it did that for a few of the mixes as well. But compared to the titanium white, it does really kind of different things. Very similarly, again, the titanium buff, in this case when mixed with the pure turquoise, really kind of dulled the color out a little bit, which can make for a definitely more complex and less realistic, or rather more realistic look to a color rather than that beautifully bright chroma that you get out of really everything else. I feel like all of these colors are what you might consider like illustrative or storybook colors. Again, that high chroma for all of those hues, the very bright, pure colors for all of them, and it really shows no matter what color it is. Even with all these positives though, in using the turquoise, what you lack out of it is a good solid deep blue. If you're thinking like a midnight blue, that kind of color is just not achievable, at least with the turquoise. Now for the second wheel, this is where we start skewing our primaries a little bit. For my red, in this one, I once again used quinacridone magenta, but I also, in this case, now switched out my blue and my yellow. In this case, my yellow is now nickel azo yellow, and the blue is now Prussian blue. This particular set of primary mixes is pretty the closest thing to my regular baseline of colors when I am mixing for my individual paintings. So the things I'm using on a more regular basis, this set is a lot closer to what I'm thinking. The nickel azo yellow is a remarkably interesting color. In this particular color wheel, it actually adds this glowing gold across all of the mixes that use it. And of course, one of the reasons why I love not only the Quin Magenta, but also in specifically mixing it with the Prussian Blue, is it makes some of the best violets in the world. I really love what I get out of a nice warm blue mixed with that violet, or that magenta, to get that beautiful, like, lavendery color that you really expect out of a good purple mix. Now, wheel 3 is what I would call the glazing master set. You might actually argue that I probably should have kept the quinacridone magenta for this, but I really needed a more opaque color to balance everything else out. So for this red, I used my Cad Red medium, kept the nickel azo yellow, and then for my blue, I added golden smalt hue. I talk about this color all the time. It's one of my secret weapons for painting. But choosing it as a base for a color wheel really allowed me to explore a lot of very different variables. So in this particular one, you don't really get the pure green, but it definitely gives you a lot more muted colors. For this particular set, again, the cadmium red is sort of the oddball out because it's very opaque, but it adds this wonderful and beautiful balance point because it's a much higher tinting color than the nickel azo yellow and the smalt. It really forces you to think about how much paint you're using and exactly where you want those mixes to lean. And the most interesting thing about this is all of the tints, including the ones with the more pure titanium white versus the Titan buff, is that all of them sort of gray out a lot more. So this particular mix of primaries would be definitely in the range of saying, if you want to go for something more realistic, specifically the smalt and the nickel azo yellow are giving you a much more muted range of colors. It's not the high chroma we started with, and it's something a little bit more reasonable for realistic painting. And additionally, because of these more muted toned down colors, and specifically the blue and the yellow being very transparent colors as well, you're getting a lot of really complex and interesting mixes. These colors are so much richer, and because with the exception of the immediate red violets and red oranges, everything is sort of that rich transparency, and if you were to put these colors on top of, say, a higher chroma underpainting, it would really enrich the entire piece. So looking at all three of these color wheels side by side, it's important to have a look at exactly what all of them are good at. Depending on what subject matter you're painting or what style you're painting in, choosing different primaries can radically change what you're painting. Per usual with my advice, I would say that knowing the range and limits of any particular color and any particular color palette, again, if you're choosing very select primaries, this is going to allow you to make smarter decisions about your painting and really explore a wider range of mixes. When you take a step back from pure red, yellow, and blue and skew those colors just slightly, you can really expand your knowledge and give yourself new insights into how to create more complex color mixes. Plus, learning to mix on a more limited color palette can be a remarkably freeing thing, especially if you're used to having a lot of colors sitting around your studio. And this level of limitation is actually a way to jumpstart your creativity and push your art further. So I'm curious what you guys think about this idea of skewing your primaries past those very pure, distinct colors. Not the pure red, not the pure primary yellow, not the pure primary blue. Let's skew that just a little bit. If you work with a more skewed set of primaries, what are those favorites for you? Also, has my exploration of these skewed primary color wheels inspired you to maybe try something a little different color-wise that maybe you're not used to? As always though, if you learned something or just love watching me paint, go ahead and hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you're not already. Check me out in socials in the description box below for more creative stuff along my interesting artistic journey here. Thanks for watching. Keep on creating. This has been from Cinder Studios, and I will see you guys next time. Probably could have been slightly better with that outro, but it worked. It sort of worked. It sort of worked.